What happens when the guy who built a company from scratch gets mistaken for a clueless temp on the worst shift in the building? Yale Travers had poured 15 years into building his manufacturing company's 17 locations across the Midwest, each one producing packaging components for everything from cosmetics to food containers. But lately, something felt off. Orders were delayed. Quality complaints were growing. And turnover at his third-largest location in Dayton had quietly tripled in the last 6 months. He'd asked for answers. The district manager, a sharp-talking guy named Elliot, brushed it off as just some burnout and a few bad hires.
Yale didn't buy it.
He trusted numbers more than words. And the numbers didn't lie. So he shaved his beard, dyed his hair, wore thick glasses, and showed up on a Monday morning with a fake resume under the name Henry. The Dayton plant had over 70 workers and 3 shifts. No one there had ever met him. He tended to stay focused on expansion and product development, rarely visiting locations unless there was a grand opening. With a clean disguise and a made-up backstory about getting laid off from a forklift job, no one questioned why he was there. The factory was loud, hot, and fast. Within 10 minutes, his shirt stuck to his back. The shift manager, a guy named Darren, barely looked at him. "You're the new temp?
Great.
You're on line 4. Don't screw up." Then he walked off. Yale didn't expect a red carpet, but the tone stung a little. He followed a quiet, thin woman who motioned for him to grab gloves. She didn't say much, just pointed to the conveyor and slapped a button. The line roared to life. The first hour was chaos. He fumbled a few containers and got snapped at by a lead named Brady. "You slow down this line again. I'm writing you up." Yale nodded, biting his tongue. By the second hour, his rhythm improved. He started noticing things. Machines groaned like they hadn't been serviced in months. Workers looked dead on their feet. Breaks were short, and no one smiled. At lunch, he found a bench outside near the loading dock. He sat alone, sipping from a water bottle, when 2 voices approached from behind the dumpster. "I swear if she screws up again, I'm gonna make her life hell." It was Brady. Yale froze. "Just give it time, man," another voice replied. Sounded like Darren. "She's barely hanging on. You push hard enough, she'll quit on her own. Then we won't have to do paperwork." Yale's stomach turned. "Nah, I'm sick of watching her stumble around. She's slow, always messing up labels. I told her she screws up again, I'm docking her break time. Next time, I'll write her up for insubordination." Yale didn't move. He kept his head down, pretending to scroll on a fake work app they'd given him during onboarding. His heart pounded. "Honestly," Darren added, "she's just pitiful. I don't know why we're keeping her. She's been through what? 2 deaths in the family? I don't care. Everyone's got problems." Brady laughed. "She cries in the bathroom. Literally. Every week." They walked off, their boots crunching gravel. Yale sat frozen. He didn't know who she was yet, but he knew what he had to do: stay quiet, stay close, and find out. That afternoon, he returned to line 4. The quiet woman who'd helped him earlier was back. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped containers. Her name tag read Viola. She looked exhausted. When he accidentally dropped a bin, she flinched. "It's okay," she whispered. "Happens to all of us." Yale watched her work. She didn't talk much, but every movement showed she was trying too hard, maybe. Her eyes were puffy, her breathing shallow. He leaned over. "You all right?" She nodded quickly. "Yeah, just allergies." He didn't push, but he knew it wasn't allergies. At the end of the shift, Darren barked at them to stay 5 minutes late. Something about cleaning up after the machine jam. Viola looked like she wanted to cry. Yale offered to handle her section. She hesitated, then whispered, "Thank you," and slipped out. As he swept spilled caps into a bin, Brady passed by and muttered, "She won't last another week." Yale's jaw clenched. He had seen enough for one day, but he had to keep going. One mistake and they'd know. And if Viola was really being pushed like that, he wasn't going to let it slide. Back in his car, with sweat drying on his back and his hands still shaking, Yale sat behind the wheel and whispered to himself, "What the hell happened to my company?" Tuesday morning started colder than expected. Yale parked in the same gravel lot, wearing the same scuffed steel toes and worn-out hoodie, blending into the growing line of workers scanning into the plant entrance. No one said much. No one ever did. Inside, the air felt heavier. The fluorescent lights above line 4 flickered overhead. Yale noticed the clock, 5 minutes to 7. Viola wasn't there yet. A few workers trickled in, shoulders hunched, expressions blank. Brady passed by holding a clipboard, barking something about restocking the shrink-wrap pallets. His eyes swept past Yale without stopping. Yale kept his head low. Viola arrived 2 minutes late. Her hair was damp, tied in a bun that looked rushed. She apologized to no one in particular and shuffled to her station, her hands already pulling gloves from the box before her coat was even off. Brady didn't miss it. "That's twice this week," he called out from across the floor. "You planning to show up on time at all?" She nodded, but didn't look up. The bus ran late. "You want to take the bus to unemployment next?" he said, scribbling something on his clipboard. From where Yale stood, he could see her hands tense mid-movement. She said nothing. The machines whirred to life again. Yale worked in rhythm with the line, but his focus was elsewhere. Everyone moved fast, too fast. The pace was nearly impossible to maintain without cutting corners. When the hopper jammed 10 minutes in, Brady stormed over and slammed a wrench against the side panel. "Who loaded this last night?" he muttered. "Idiots can't even follow basic procedure." He didn't ask who fixed it. Yale did. Quietly, quickly, and without drawing attention. By mid-morning, Yale could feel the fatigue setting in. The bins were heavier today. The labels had changed, and the new ones didn't stick properly. Every third package had to be redone. Across from him, Viola worked in silence, her steps automatic. When another label peeled off during sealing, Brady appeared again. "Seriously?" he snapped. "That's the third bad batch this week. You trying to cost us a client?" "It's the adhesive," she said. "They switched brands. It's not holding." He didn't even glance at the label. Excuses don't package orders. Then he turned to Yale. "You, Henry. You see her mess up again, you flag it. Don't cover for her. We're not here to babysit." Yale met his eyes. "She hasn't messed up." Brady stared for a second, then walked away muttering under his breath. Later, during the mid-shift break, Yale sat near the vending machines, sipping from a cracked thermos. Viola came in last, head down, clutching a granola bar. She sat 2 chairs down, avoiding eye contact. "Did he write you up?" Yale asked, keeping his voice low. She shook her head. "Not yet." "You think he will?" "He's been waiting for a reason," she said, voice barely audible. "He knows I can't afford to miss hours." Yale paused. "Why not talk to someone?" She offered a hollow laugh. "Like who?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Not without blowing his cover. Viola didn't finish her snack. She stood early, wiped her hands on her jeans, and walked out. That afternoon, a pallet tipped in the far corner of the warehouse. A crash of plastic echoed through the building. Everyone froze. Then Darren's voice cut through. "No one moves until we know who loaded that." A few workers exchanged glances. Yale recognized the wrapper design. It was loaded during the night shift. Viola wasn't even scheduled then. Still, Darren stomped toward line 4. "Which one of you was on label 2 last night?" No one answered. He pointed at Viola. "Was it you?" "I wasn't here last night," she said. Darren took a step closer. "You sure? Because this looks like your section." "I wasn't scheduled," she repeated.
"Funny," he said.
"I thought you picked up extra shifts." "Not since last week." Darren stared at her for a beat too long. Then he turned to the clipboard in his hand and mumbled, "Fine. But I'm logging this anyway." "You can't log me for something I didn't do," she said, voice shaking. "You want to argue about it?" he snapped. Yale stepped forward. "She's right. She wasn't here. I was." Darren's eyes narrowed. "And who asked you?" Yale didn't move. "I was here. I'd remember." Darren let the silence hang, then turned and walked off. Viola didn't say anything. She just went back to stacking lids, her fingers moving faster than necessary. By the end of the shift, Yale's shoulders ached and his hands stung. He waited until the last worker left the locker area, then walked out into the back hallway that led to the night supervisor's office. Inside, a woman sat behind a desk, eyes on a monitor. She looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm new Henry. Just started yesterday." She leaned back in her chair. "I know who you are. You're on line 4.
Yeah.
I had a question." She nodded, waiting. "Do you have a way to report misconduct that doesn't go through Darren or Brady?" Her expression changed slightly, but only for a second. "Why?" "Just wondering. Hypothetically." She tapped her pen against the desk.
There's a hotline.
"It's in the break room, on the back of the safety board. You call, leave a message, and corporate's supposed to follow up." "Does anyone?" She didn't answer right away.
Sometimes.
"Depends who's listening." Yale gave a tight nod. "Thanks." As he turned to leave, she added, "If you're getting heat from Darren, lay low. He doesn't like being challenged." I noticed. Outside, the wind had picked up. Yale walked back to his car, the soles of his boots dragging slightly. In 2 days, he'd seen enough to know this wasn't burnout. It was something worse, systemic, tolerated, and deeply rooted. He pulled out his burner phone and typed a short message to his assistant in Chicago. Set private meeting with HR and legal for Friday. Nothing virtual. In person only. Also, pull full incident reports for Dayton location. Last 4 months.
No filters.
His thumb hovered over the send button, then added one more line. And find out if an employee named Viola has ever filed a complaint. If so, I want every detail. If not,
Find out why.
Wednesday started with a chill that crept under the collar of Yale's hoodie as he stepped into the plant just before sunrise. The overhead lights buzzed faintly in the locker hallway, and the air smelled faintly of burnt plastic and old rubber mats. He punched in like everyone else, boots heavy on the concrete, and made his way to line 4 where the same dull pulse of the machines had already begun. There were fewer workers than the day before. 2 positions on the adjacent line stood empty, and the guy who usually ran the seal check station was nowhere in sight. Yale glanced toward Viola's spot. She was there, hunched slightly, adjusting the straps on her gloves with slow, practiced movements. Her face was drawn, eyes unfocused. She didn't look rested. He said nothing. Neither did she. Darren paced along the center aisle, clipboard under one arm while sipping from a styrofoam cup. He didn't stop to talk to anyone. Just scanned the floor like he was counting heads, then muttered to himself and walked off toward the maintenance bay. The line started, and the noise swallowed everything else. Midway through the first cycle, the adhesive rollers jammed again. Not a massive error, but enough to cause a stutter in the line. Yale stepped back, hit the pause button, and opened the housing to clear the buildup.
He worked fast.
When the rollers clicked back into place and the machine restarted, he noticed Viola staring at the clock. Her hands weren't moving. "You all right?" he asked without turning toward her. She blinked.
Yeah.
Just counting minutes. Before he could say more, Brady appeared behind them. His breath smelled like stale cigarettes, and he leaned in too close. "Count faster," he said. "You're already on thin ice." Yale didn't respond. Viola didn't either. By late morning, the tension had thickened. The bins were backing up again, and shifts from the other side of the warehouse were being redirected to help with overflow. One of the new temps, a 19-year-old named Corey, dropped an entire container of lids near the west entry. Instead of helping, Brady walked over, shook his head, and said, "If you're gonna act like a toddler, maybe you need diapers instead of work gloves." Corey flushed, eyes darting to the floor. Yale locked eyes with Brady across the line. "You gonna help or just talk?" Brady raised one brow. "You volunteering for his screw-ups now?" "Just asking," Yale said, voice flat. "We short on hands. Doesn't help to humiliate the ones we've got." Brady gave a sarcastic laugh and walked away without another word. The rest of the shift passed under a growing sense of unease. No music played. No announcements came over the PA. Even the forklift drivers moved more slowly, like the weight in the room had thickened. By the end of the cycle, Viola had developed a cough. She didn't complain, but it worsened as the afternoon dragged on. When the final bell rang, Yale waited near the back door for her. She exited last, pulling a faded denim backpack tight across her shoulders. "You need a ride?" he asked. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Just to the bus stop. It's a long walk from here." They walked in silence to the lot. His car was nondescript, a beat-up sedan he'd rented under his alias. As she slid into the passenger seat, she kept her hands folded in her lap. "I'm sorry I'm not very talkative," she said after a moment. "You don't owe me an apology. I just don't want to cause more problems. I know some people think I already do." He turned onto the main road. "You've been here how long?" "Almost 6 years." He glanced at her. "You ever promoted?" She shook her head. "They said I was too timid." They pulled up near the cracked sidewalk by the bus stop. No shelter, just a faded metal bench and a sign with peeling decals. "Thanks," she said, opening the door. Before she stepped out, he asked, "Why don't you go to HR about them?" She gave a tired laugh and looked out the window. "I tried.
Once.
Last year. Got told it wasn't their place to interfere with how supervisors manage discipline. Said unless someone laid hands on me, there was no actionable offense." Yale sat still, hands on the wheel, watching her walk away with her shoulders hunched against the wind. That night, he didn't sleep. He reviewed the Dayton plant's HR records on his secure laptop. Viola's name came up only once in a flagged complaint dismissed as personality conflict. No record of follow-up. No interview. The note had been closed 2 days after submission. Thursday morning, he arrived earlier than usual. He waited in the back lot, watching who arrived and in what condition. 2 workers were limping slightly. One had a bandage around his forearm. The plant nurse's office had been shut for months, he discovered. Budget reasons, supposedly. Inside, a new temp was being trained by Darren himself. Yale kept back, watching. Darren pointed at a manual, then walked away mid-sentence, leaving the kids staring at the machine, unsure what to do. By the first mid-morning break, Yale had seen enough. He walked into the supervisor's office, where Darren sat reading something on his phone. "Got a minute?" Yale asked. Darren didn't look up. "Put in a request form."
"I'm slammed."
Yale stepped forward, pulled the door shut behind him. "I'm not Henry. My name is Yale Travers." Darren froze. Yale continued, voice even. "I own this company." The silence was immediate. For a full 5 seconds, Darren didn't move, then slowly lowered his phone. "You're joking." Yale pulled out his ID and placed it on the desk. Darren stared at it, color draining from his face. "Sit down," Yale said. Darren sat. "I've been here 4 days. I've watched you berate workers, ignore safety, and manipulate write-ups to push people out. You've targeted Viola specifically. I heard you and Brady behind the dumpster on Monday." Darren opened his mouth. Yale raised a hand.
"No explanations.
Just answers." "How long have you known about the adhesive issue?" "What issue?" "The new labels. They don't stick. Everyone knows it. You blamed Viola for it." "Why?" Darren shifted in his seat. Look, it's not personal. She's been here 6 years. I didn't think she could keep up. You never gave her the chance. Yale stood. You're done here. Effective immediately. Collect your things, leave your badge. Security will escort you out. Darren stood, face pale. You serious? Dead serious. Yale stepped out of the office and walked straight to the floor. Brady was at the back, leaning against a crate, pretending to inspect a shipping manifest. Yale approached.
You.
Office.
Now.
Brady looked up. What for? Because I'm the owner, and your behavior ends today. Half the floor froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Brady turned red. You what? I heard what you said Monday. You've made this place toxic. You're fired.
Now.
Brady didn't move. If you don't walk to that office in the next 10 seconds, I'll have you escorted out in front of everyone. Brady's jaw clenched, but he walked. Yale turned to the stunned workers. There are going to be some changes. Starting now. If you've been harassed, ignored, or punished for speaking up, I want to hear from you. Personally. We're setting up a temporary office in the break room. You'll find me there all day. He found Viola near her station, quietly folding a stack of bin dividers. She looked up, confused. I'm sorry, he said. She blinked. For what? For not seeing it sooner. She didn't say anything, just nodded slowly, like it hadn't fully sunk in yet. Yale turned and walked toward the break room. There was still a full shift ahead. But the real work was just beginning. Friday began before sunrise. The parking lot behind the Dayton plant was quieter than usual. Word had spread fast. Darren and Brady were gone, and no one knew what was coming next. Inside, the break room had been cleared of vending machines and folding chairs. In their place stood a long utility table and 2 clipboards. A handwritten sign taped to the wall read, Employee feedback direct to ownership.
No filters. No retaliation.
Yale stood beside it, dressed in the same worn hoodie and work pants he'd worn all week. Except this time, no one called him Henry. They called him Sir. Some wouldn't meet his eyes. Others hovered near the door, unsure if they were allowed to speak freely. He didn't push. Instead, he walked the floor.
No clipboard. No entourage.
Just him. The early shift was short by 6 workers. He knew that already the staffing reports were accurate, but the cause hadn't been. Most of the missing weren't no-shows or lazy. They'd quit. Quietly. One by one. A few had even gone to the ER for repetitive strain injuries that were never logged. That came out yesterday during a quiet conversation with the night janitor. He stopped at line 4. The machine was off. Viola stood at her station, holding her gloves in one hand and a piece of paper in the other. Her eyes flicked up when she saw him. I got this in my locker, she said. Yale took it. A typed disciplinary warning with no signature, dated 2 days earlier. The reason? Unreliable performance. There was a checkbox at the bottom marked Final Notice. He folded it slowly, then looked at her. You didn't show this to anyone? Didn't think it would matter. He handed it back. It does now. She paused. Is this really happening? Are they really gone?
Yes.
And I'm not just here to remove bad supervisors. I'm here to fix why they were allowed to stay as long as they did. She nodded, but didn't look convinced. Viola, he said, you've worked here longer than most. I need you to tell me something honestly. Not as an employee, as someone who's survived this place. She hesitated, then met his eyes. What's the one thing you would change if you could? She thought for a long moment. Stop treating people like they're disposable. When someone gets hurt, they just disappear. When someone's overwhelmed, they get written up. No one ever asks why. It's just easier to replace than to repair. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned back toward the line. I'm not going to let that continue, but I'll need help. She didn't answer, but she stayed at her station when he walked away. That was enough. By mid-morning, more workers began stopping by the break room. Some spoke openly. Others wrote notes and walked out without saying a word. One man, a forklift operator named Luis, dropped off a torn notebook page with a list of parts that had been requested for months, but never ordered. Yale didn't ask why. He just added it to the growing stack. At noon, he brought in 2 HR officers from the Chicago office. Not the ones who had ignored the prior report he'd replaced them. These were new. He introduced them at a full-floor meeting. Every employee was paid for the hour, even if they didn't attend. He stood at the front, without a microphone, and spoke clearly. "This plan has failed you," he began. "And that's on me. I trusted a system to self-report, and it didn't. I trusted management to lead, and they didn't. That ends today." He let the words sit. Effective immediately, we're implementing a 5-point reform plan. Not slogans. Not posters. Real changes. He held up one finger. One, a rotating employee council with direct access to me or any executive.
No filters.
You'll vote for your representatives every quarter. Second finger. 2, a full audit of past injury reports, safety violations, and write-ups. Any pattern of abuse or neglect will be addressed, retroactively if necessary.
Third.
3, an anonymous reporting system run independently, with third-party oversight. No supervisor will see complaints before HR and legal do.
Fourth.
4, line leads and shift managers will undergo mandatory leadership and ethics training. Any resistance means removal. No exceptions. And finally, 5, every employee with more than 2 years of service will be reviewed for advancement and cross-training. We stop wasting experience, starting now. There was no applause, just silence. But it wasn't the cold kind. It was the kind that comes when people are too stunned to react. Afterward, Yale returned to line 4. The machine remained off. He didn't rush to restart it. Instead, he walked the perimeter of the floor with a clipboard of his own, not to grade anyone, but to sketch a new layout for workflow. He asked questions, took notes, didn't talk about metrics or targets, just asked what wasn't working. Near the end of the shift, he found Viola in the back hallway, sitting on a crate with her arms wrapped around her knees. She didn't look upset, just tired in a different way. "I read your file," he said. She didn't look up. "You never took a sick day in 6 years. You've trained 17 new hires. You worked a double shift during a snowstorm without being asked." Still, she said nothing. "I want you to lead the new cross-training program, with a raise. And your own budget." She looked up sharply. "Why me?" "Because you've been doing the job already. Just without the title." Her jaw shifted slightly. "What if people think I don't deserve it? Then they can talk to me." She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "I'll need help. You'll get it." That night, the plant shut down an hour early with pay. A maintenance team came in to begin overhauling line 4. Safety guards. Ergonomic adjustments. A new adhesive supplier had already confirmed shipment. It would arrive Monday. As Yale walked out into the night, he paused at the edge of the lot. A few workers stood nearby, talking quietly. One of them gave a small nod as he passed. Another just held up a hand in silent thanks. He didn't need more than that. Behind him, the lights in the plant dimmed one by one. For the first time in years, they wouldn't stay on all night. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't need to.